Anime that depict adult relationships are a bit of a rare gem. No, not that kind of adult relationships. But showing a more mature relationship where one or more characters are into anime is on a whole nother level of rare. You either get into really cringy territory where you hate just about everyone there, kind of like going to anime club, or it feels too generic to stand out from the rest of the trash that gets exported to us. You might have a personal favorite or two, but for me, they are Wotakoi and Danna ga nani ga itteru ka.
Wrong.
Danna ga nani ga itteru ka wakaranai ken. Danna ga nani ga itteru ka wakaranai ken. Or husband. What makes these two shows so special in my eyes is the fact that the couples are very different, yet mature enough to handle their differences and appreciate one another, even when they find it difficult, very difficult to relate to each other's interests and issues. They're both highly reminiscent of my own relationship, so much so that my partner and I often end up quoting these anime in our day-to-day conversations. This will be a much more personal video than the previous ones I've made up to this point, but I can't help myself from sharing these frankly underrated shows with you. Seriously, if you get one thing from all this, watch them. Please. Please.
私と旦那が結婚できたのはなぜだろう。互いの悪い部分が分かってるから？
If I had $1 for every time that my partner and I have recited these wedding vows to each other, I wouldn't have to worry about living in poverty.
大丈夫。
It's in this very first scene that I can't understand what my husband is saying makes me laugh, but also hits close to home. Maybe a little bit too close to home. The insecurities and the unique relationship of its main characters are exposed in a way that demonstrates to us the level of comfort they've already achieved with one another. After the honeymoon, we get to know them a bit more. The wife, Kaoru, is a somewhat workaholic but very level-headed salarywoman who marries her ex-coworker and current neat husband, Hajime. Unlike his more practical wife, Hajime lives in his own little bubble of anime and manga, only poking his head out of it for the sake of his wife. And even then, often with very comical results. Now this is a common trope if we've ever seen one. The competent and considerate woman married to an absolute mess of a guy. I wouldn't be too surprised if you passed on husband because of this cliché. After all, in all these shows, you'd beg to know how or why any reasonable adult would be with a guy like Hajime. It's simply beyond our comprehension. But here's the reason why it just works. Hajime is not just a nerd. He's very aware of his shortcomings and doesn't try to hide them from Kaoru, even though sometimes maybe he should try to hide them a little bit. He wants nothing more than to make her happy, from pretending to enjoy her god-awful cooking,
イエスだね。
嫌味言うの。
カオルさんのすべてにイエスだお。
You better pack your bag and move to Simp City right now.
to trying to get a real job for the sake of her finally being able to tell her housewife friends what the hell it is her husband actually does, which is run a blog about anime. Wow, he's actually a good person? Shock. Shock face Pikachu. And Kaoru isn't just a standard non-otaku workaholic. While she complains that her husband doesn't have a real job, she'd rather see him happy doing what he likes than something more standard. She also tries her best to accommodate Hajime's interests and join him in on them. It doesn't always work,
何も考えずに見てすいません。
but hey, still, it's an attempt. When Hajime tries to become normal for her, she knows it's fake and would rather have him be, well, himself and not some soulless worker. Alright, here's why this speaks to me. I relate to both Kaoru and Hajime because I'm that sort of in-between weeb who's afraid of exposing my weeb side while presenting myself as a workaholic normie like Kaoru. Meeting my partner, who's an unapologetic film freak in the same vein as Hajime, made me realize how divided my identity was, and powered me to be understanding with his film obsession despite barely comprehending it half the time. Kaoru and Hajime's relationship pokes fun at all the differences between them in a very mature way, and it makes me feel a lot more optimistic about my own relationship and the future it will bring. But one of the most interesting aspects to me is how the series handles sexual themes. Surprisingly, it's pretty frank about it, and doesn't try to shy away from the details.
この後めちゃくちゃセックスした。Hey, that's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
You won't be seeing any explicit content, though. They're matter-of-fact about it, as if trying to tell us, yeah, they're a couple, and they do it. What about it? It makes me wonder what other projects the studio had worked on before. Oh. I see. But when the show needs to be serious, it does so easily and with maturity. The prime example being in episode 11, which has a completely different animation style from the rest of the series. It's a little jarring at first, but considering the episode's themes, the decision makes sense and it helps us to empathize with the fears and uncertainties that Kaoru was going through. Hell, I was practically going through the same thing, albeit with one exception. Even if you don't have a weeb in your life, it's hard not to relate to Kaoru. Not to mention, a lot of the scenes where Kaoru and Hajime go about their daily lives are just cute and romantic. It's refreshing to see a happily married couple and see how they live without any of the melodrama one would expect. It's way better than actually watching the courtship, which seems to drag on longer than necessary. There's none of that, oh no, we just had some weird misunderstanding that's contrived and beyond how any sensible person would react. Is this what will drive us apart? Keep watching to find out. Instead, we get
あんたも友達呼びなさいよ。
友達、ネットにはたくさん。
ごめん。
俺こそごめんだお。
If you got an hour to spare, then you really need to check Husband out, although by the end, you'll be wishing there's more of it. Wotakoi is a very different type of show from Husband, besides the fact, of course, that it's a full-length one, in that it has characters with similar but not identical interests getting together. If you look beyond that surface, however, the series drives the same message home. Those couples stay together because they're open with each other and accepting of their differences. The show mostly focuses on Narumi, who's just started her new office job. Her main goal this time around is to keep her biggest secret under wraps. She's a hardcore She's a hardcore otaku. But luck would have it that her childhood friend Hirotaka also works there, and quickly blows her cover in front of two of her new co-workers. Don't worry though, the two of them are pretty cool when you get to know them. When Narumi rants to Hirotaka about her previous ex finding out about her otakuness and promptly dumping her, Hirotaka suggests the two of them date. After all, they already know about each other's obsessions and get along well as friends. Despite being apprehensive about it at first, Narumi accepts and eventually discovers what really keeps two people together. Not pretty appearances, but acceptance and genuine interest in a partner's true self. Something that Narumi never shared with her boyfriends before, and loves sharing with Hirotaka in the past. The same can be said about Hanako and Kabakura's relationship, who are actually my preferred couple. Hanako and Kabakura are also otaku, Narumi can thank the heavens for that, but have even more differing tastes. Yet they share incredibly similar personalities. This means they clash a lot due to having a very competitive streak.
今日はどっちが原因で喧嘩を？
こいつ。
But somehow, they've been able to maintain their relationship since their high school graduation. We rarely get to see how high school sweethearts end up acting and living together as adults, and I think those two are a unique and fun example of what it takes to stay together over the years. Again, it's a breath of fresh air from the seemingly dozens of high school romances that we get every year. Do we really need another will they won't they scenario with a couple that barely shares any screen time or act like complete morons around one another? No, we don't, so stop making shows like that. There's exceptions, of course, but not enough to shake the formula up very much. In Wotakoi, however, it's pretty much asked in the first episode, like, I couldn't date you, I could get you all of the video game items you want. I could also help you sell your yaoi. And then the rest of the series is seeing how their relationship develops. That's not to say that Wotakoi doesn't explore a few of these themes or share a few traits with those shows, but it does so in a more mature way. Although they still shy away from intimacy, it's not on their mind.
じゃあ俺んちね。
今日の下着が思い出せないなるみであった。
Narumi and Hirotaka obviously like each other, and the question of how far the relationship will go is always on their mind.
なるみは思い出した。Hirotakaも男であることを。そして下着はベージュであることを。
After all, it's more or less obvious that Hanako and Taro have had something like that. Why else would Hanako hang around Taro's apartment in sweatpants? Both couples have their worries and insecurities about their relationship, such as if the other would prefer a more normal person and wondering if the other is stuck in a relationship of convenience rather than actual love. But instead of spending several episodes over some cliched misunderstanding, Wotakoi tries out a revolutionary new technique called having characters act like actual adults and not go around worrying about it. In the episode where Hanako breaks down crying, worried that she's nothing like Kabakura's ideal woman, even after they've been together for so many years, Kabakura listens to her and comforts her in his own specific way by poking fun at her.
お前より楽で可愛いオタク女探せば5万といるだろうぜ。 ついでに胸も大きい女。
あっそうじゃあとっとと探しに行けば。
やっとこっち見たな、ブス。
And wouldn't you know it, that actually works. Who'd have thought, huh? The fears of not being good enough are very real, even for long-term couples, and the way those characters handled it made me forget I wasn't watching a scene from my own life. We even get to see Kabakura himself act self-conscious on a different occasion, bringing things full circle. It's always endearing to see a couple where both partners want to be the best they can be for each other. These choices help make the show a lot more accessible than many other romance shows out there, even Husband. There's nothing too out of the ordinary here, aside from some of the hardcore otakuness that comes out now and then, making it easy to relate to all of the characters. It's even believable why everyone is friends with each other. They might all have different tastes and skills, but they can respect one another for their passions. Except Kabakura at first. The yaoi wins us all over though in the end. If only it was that easy to get friends like that in real life too. Speaking of real life, maybe if we join the working world despite our inner needs, love will just come knocking on our door. But those two are relatively old shows. If we look into the present... Yeah, things aren't looking too good outside now.
Soon God will exact his revenge upon us for our imperfections.
So, why not just enjoy watching other couples instead? Ones that don't actually infuriate you either and make you want to be with someone yourself. Who knows, maybe one of these shows will fill that void in your life like when a Slice of Life series ends. Thank God that unlike you lonely losers, I already have a partner to watch all of this stuff with. On second thought,